Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the Caribbean Conference on Corruption, Compliance, and Cybercrime. This is the most exciting panel, I believe, that we can look forward to in this conference on cybercrime, because it features some experts who will be able to share with us, exactly as the title for this panel says, new insights on cybercrime, lessons for the Caribbean. With me today is Jason Manar, who's had extensive 16-year experience with the FBI as a cybercrime expert. His bio is in our package on the website, as well as that for Dale. Dale Joseph serves with CARICOM IMPACS, and Dale has great perspectives on the regional cybercrime and cybersecurity picture, as well as the implications for other themes of the conference, which are money laundering and corruption. I welcome you all to this special session that we've put on cybercrime insights and trends. Welcome to the audience of over now 1,020 persons from 45 countries across the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome. What I'd like to do is to start with some initial perspectives, some introductory perspectives from both Dale as well as Jason. Jason just joined us because he is currently, if you see behind him, he will tell you more about it. He's at the Atlanta Falcons Stadium in the US, where he was just a speaker. We also have another panel member who's currently in an airport somewhere trying to get on. If Professor Waller can join us, that would be great as well. But we have Jason, who has just joined us, so I'll give him a breather and I'll start with Dale. And I'll ask Dale if he can just give some introductory remarks on the ideas of the panel. The focus of this particular panel, I should say, we're looking at new cybercrime methods, particularly new cyber fraud and cyber fraud methods and other cyber security impacts. We look at that in the context of where we are currently related to COVID, etc. We want to examine how the region can learn and adapt and grow from looking at the modern global digital cyber environment. What are our vulnerabilities? What are our strengths, if any? What are we learning even through COVID? Whether COVID has exacerbated it by creating more room for digitalization that may have exposed the initial additional vulnerabilities for us in the region. What is the regional security and cyber risk and cybercrime plan, and what implications that might have for us? We'll talk around those themes, as well as what it would take for us to be able to support in a sustainable way the regional digital transformation. And by sustainable, I mean in a way that promotes growth to be able to end poverty, which ties back into the theme of this conference. What type of techniques, methods, tools, insights we need to learn about our current environment and where we're going. We're here to talk about things like the dark web, which Jason will explain. And we hear things like the metaverse and the multiverse and the omniverse, things that are teasing to the mind. But we will try in this panel to explore as much of everything that we believe might be cyber related, provide some insights to you. We'll go through some initial intros from the panelists, then we'll get into some of the meat of the matter that I just mentioned, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So please feel free to begin to pour your questions into the chat, audience members, while we talk about what the implications are for the region and what new insights. And Dale, I'd like to start with you. If you can share your initial intro on the panel topics and the key guiding questions, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Boyce, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this discussion. Good. Hello again, Jason. It's good to see you from last year. So from a regional perspective, at CARICOM IMPACS, we have seen an increase in romance scams, romance fraud, where elderly citizens are actually targeted by online criminals to actually defraud them of their savings and resources, and so that is something that we would have observed over the last 18 months. Also, there's an increase in online child abuse reports and the dissemination and sharing of this type of material in the region. Additionally, we had a few cases of cryptojacking reported in our member states over the last couple of months. Also, we had a few IoT, Internet of Things related, human-related cybersecurity issues that came up. Also, there were PPE scams which were actually happening online, the sale of masks and different types of COVID-19 PPE themed scams we were seeing. Also, we saw the sale of some fake vaccination cards over the internet and the deep and dark web as well in our region. So that is some of the things that we saw as well. And in addition to 2020, where we had some ransomware attacks, malware attacks, some attacks on government websites with some quite pungent political messages. And we also had some email phishing attacks, business email compromises in the region as well. These are actually on the rise, in our opinion, because of the remote working methods or policies in place by our member states. And we at CARICOM IMPACS, we have been continuously working with our member states, from government officials to judiciary professionals to law enforcement agencies, national CIRTs and CSIRTs, to build capacity as it relates to bolstering our regional cyber resilience. In fact, right now we are actually running, as this session is going on, there is a training session that is happening now where we are training our law enforcement and first responders on cybercrime investigative methodologies as well as incident response for the CIRTs and CSIRTs. And after that, we will be targeting judiciary professionals. And this falls under part of our 11th EDF funded cyber program, which would actually be targeted to bolster our regional cyber intelligence. So that is my opening, Dr. Boyce. And I would now hand over back to you so that we could continue this discussion.
Hey, Dale, before you hand it over, I know the audience doesn't have a question, but I've got a quick question. So
sure.
Is there any cyber incidents that are mandatory reporting in the Caribbean right now, or is that by each individual jurisdiction?
All right, that's a very good question, Jason, and I'll answer it, but it's by individual jurisdiction. However, under this project that we are currently working, we are currently developing a regional digital forensic management platform, which would allow regional reporting of cyber crimes and cybersecurity issues. Actually, so we are hoping to bring everything under one umbrella so that we can see a regional snapshot of what is happening in the region. Because as you know, it's important for resource allocation. It's important for us to have an idea where to allocate resources, where to build capacity, and so on. And just to add to that, we did a regional survey, a virtual regional survey last year to discover the cyber training gaps. And based on those gaps, we hired a consultant to develop curricula for us. And that is actually training that is happening now that I just spoke about. So I hope I answered your question, Jason.
100%. And we found that very difficult too in the FBI when I was with the FBI, those training gaps, because we found it took much longer to train a cyber agent, than it did, other types of agents, because of the technical expertise, because of the various skill sets that are required to do these types of investigations. Now with cryptocurrencies, and as we talked about before, the dark web and in various ways in which criminals love to obfuscate not only their activity, but obviously their funds. So.
Great. That's excellent. And it ties right into Derek Burton, who is currently stuck in Sawana, unable to be the moderator for this panel, provided me with a question that relates exactly to that. So I'm going to come to that, this idea of training and developing talent in the region and then retaining talent in the region as well. Let me just preface, before I ask Jason to do his intro, let me do a little bit of intro on him and his connection to CDB. We invited Jason and his team to come to CDB back in 2017, and he very graciously came and did some training for us. And that was a really good partnership that started between CDB and the FBI in terms of being able to have that shared expertise. Jason also attended and spoke at our conference last year, as you mentioned, Dale. And what I really like about Jason is he works in some of the most technical things, even things I don't understand well enough, but he manages to break it down very, very well, as you did last year. In fact, I think after the conference, someone contacted me and commended with a commendation for the FBI guy who broke things down so nicely. So I'm going to ask you now to break this down for us. We're in a situation, and by the way, it's only 3 of us now, so we'll have a good old chat. So feel free to ask questions of each other as we go along. It wouldn't be interrupting me as moderator, that's fine. But Jason, so let's lay where we are right now. We're in a state of pandemic still, where there has been greater force for everyone to go online. So there's a greater online community, persons of all ages attending school and work, etc. We're in what I would call a hyper environment. That's a layman term for a situation where there's a larger gathering in a single place or spot, which could increase vulnerabilities. Tell us in your intro, what are some of the things that you can either talk about or think about in that context from a cybercrime perspective, in terms of emerging trends and what you're seeing where you are?
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, let me say that this will be the first time I'm not the FBI guy at a Caribbean conference. I've just within the last 3 months taken a job with a software development company called Kaseya, who was in the news themselves back in July for an incident, and it's quite frankly how I got to know them so well and became their CISO. So I have a very unique perspective where I have seen things from not only the government side and the FBI side, but also, now protecting multiple environments in a multi-billion-dollar company. So I'll try to continue to break those down as small as we can, and to a manageable level, because at the end of the day, I think every single one of us, no matter what our role in a various organization, we have to do our due diligence and make sure that we do everything we possibly can to educate ourselves and make sure that we're a good steward of whatever environment we're in. So what I mean by that is no longer gone are the days where you can go to a company, have a key, put the key in, open the lock, and now all the information that you need is in that building. I can almost guarantee you in the Caribbean, that's not where all the information is. It resides on the network and a computer. And because the information that keeps our companies running and the information that we need to do our job is in a digital format in this new digital age, it's incumbent upon us to learn just a little bit more about how to be, how to have good digital hygiene. Make sure that we do the small fundamental things to protect our information. I mean, we all know growing up, right? Your mom and your dad and your family probably told you, hey, look, we're not just going to open the door for any strangers, or we're not going to jump in somebody else's car. But a lot of times when we're on a network, that's exactly what we do when we click on a link. It's basically like hopping in a car saying, hey, this is a nice panel van with no windows, and I don't know why you guys are masked up, but take me wherever this link goes, right? So I don't know if that helps kind of break it down, or even when we're talking to kids, but it's not just a quote unquote IT problem. It's not just the geeky guys downstairs that put the network together. It's not their problem. I'm going to click on it or set it and forget it. It's something that we all have to take responsibility for and take pride in. And we really should, because at the end of the day, one of the things that I was struck when I went to the Caribbean conference was the pride, the individual pride and accomplishment that people had to be working for their organizations and working hard and doing really good work. And so I really want to see that continue in the cyber realm. And I know that was a long introduction, and I'm going to get to the question. And the question is, what are the new trends, or what are some of the new things that we're seeing? Quite frankly, just like Dale had pointed out, we saw ransomware absolutely explode. And part of that was because I feel that the digital vector just opened up in a wide way because of COVID. We saw more people that were connected more infrastructure and networks going up to allow people to work remote than ever before. And it just gave a vector, especially initially, to the adversary that they didn't have before. Because quite frankly, there were some organizations that were ill prepared and not ready to have their entire staff work remotely. And it caused them to unfortunately sacrifice some cybersecurity measures, which allowed it to allow the actors to gain access or easement into systems more easily. With that being said, unfortunately, what we saw the most of was more of the same. We saw ransomware, we saw phishing attacks, we saw that the intrusions that I was getting the most calls on were still intrusions, not from necessarily zero-day exploits, but known vulnerabilities that had either gone unpatched, known vulnerabilities that just hadn't been taken care of, or it was because of the end user and they had been phished, and there was a credential harvester that harvested their credentials. What does that mean? Somebody clicked on a site, it wasn't the right site, they put in their password, and I've even seen people go so far when they've had two-factor authentication, put in their password, it's given over to the actor, and then 5 minutes later, they give them their two-factor token authentication because all of a sudden they're getting a text or an email, and you really shouldn't do text or email anymore. You really should have a token that you enter, whether that's like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator. There's several out there, but they're actually saying yes or entering that information into a fictitious site for the actor, which then bypasses two-factor authentication. So oftentimes we get lulled into a false sense of security that multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication is going to take care of everything, and we can, quote, like I said before, set it and forget it and not have to worry about that cyber hygiene, not have to worry about what our actions are. And at least here in the States, we've seen a lot of companies that have taken this cyber hygiene very seriously through education. And then not only through education, but they've gotten very strict on the number of times that they're going to allow repeat offenders be those repeat offenders in the company. Meaning that there are some organizations that have, after a number of times of you doing this, and after being counseled and going to training and everything else, they finally decide that they have to part ways with you.
That has brought us to two very important points there, Jason. So thanks for ending on that note, because the very first question we have in the chat is that in addition to training of IT business professionals and experts, how important is the training and awareness of the average end user? And I'd like to ask you to react to that before I ask Dale the next question in the audience, and then we can talk around how do we train and retain that type of talent, particularly in a region like ours where resourcing of and availability of IT experts are rare. But Jason, how important is it to do both, train the professionals and keep them constantly trained, as well as the end user?
So let's look at it as two different questions, right? So let's first, since I ended on the end user and we were talking about phishing, let's take the second part of the question first. So how important is training and awareness to the end user? It's super important. And here's why. You may think, oh, well, I'm a secretary or a janitor, or I am a low-level individual in this company, and therefore I don't have access. But see, there are things out there that would allow you potentially on servers to escalate someone's access and privilege. And so once they get a foothold in the door, if they have these tools or there's known vulnerabilities on your servers that allow for that escalation of privilege, they will use you and then give you different accesses. They will give you things that you never had before, and you are their way to get around the firewalls, to get around what I consider the walls of the castle, the moat, to get around the locked door and everything that your cybersecurity team has put up to, keep these bad actors out. Well, they've skipped all that and they've gone directly to you. And now, because there's a known vulnerability within a server that hasn't been patched on the inside, because sometimes people don't patch things that are inside that brick wall and inside that moat, thinking that they're secure and that they're safe. And so, because of their legacy systems or older systems, sometimes they're never touched. And when that's the case and someone gets a foothold, they will escalate those privileges, and then they will move laterally, which means they will move from server to server. They will move everywhere and start gaining additional information and intelligence and find out whatever value that company has and steal from it. So whether that's dropping an executable, which is an executable, think of it like a ransomware kind of bomb that goes off in your computer, right? It's something that, can be dropped. It will execute a program, and then all of a sudden, everything is locked up. Or if it's certain information that they want, they can drop an executable in there that slowly starts to siphon off the information that they want from the company, and then they'll utilize that, whether that's selling it to nation state actors, whether that's selling it, on the dark web or the dark market. So end user training, regular training, good training that is different, is critical to the hygiene and the health of any company or organization, regardless of where you are in the world. So, in addition to the training IT business professionals and experts, and then keeping them. So, there's been several studies done, especially here in the States and around the world, about what keeps good talent. And you would be surprised to find it's not always the money. It's not always the business. It is the direct supervisor of those IT professionals. It is how well they create an environment of inclusiveness, how well they trust and get regular feedback from that IT professional and have a true team environment. And when you really start setting the tone and have a true team environment where your team understands the why behind decisions that you're making, whether they're popular or unpopular, and you start getting buy-in to what your vision is, and you start listening to people, and honestly, you start treating people the way you want to be treated. I often say, you want to be the leader that you wish you had. So if you always keep in mind that you want to be that leader that you wish you had, very seldom are you going to create an environment that is toxic where someone wants to leave. Because at the end of the day, people will pass on oftentimes higher professions if they are getting support and they're getting training that they believe is going to take them to the next level. They've shown that they will stay significantly longer than if you create, well, let's just say a subpar environment. And so I think that's really critical, is hiring the right cyber leaders that know how to set that tone and create that environment. Because without that, quite frankly, you're going to train them up and they're going to be gone to the Microsofts, the Googles, and all the big companies of the world. Otherwise, if you create that family atmosphere, I mean, I know from folks in the Caribbean, just like me in Kentucky, I was very happy in a small, modest, very, very small house with a very big family because my family was there, because we all loved each other. We didn't need a great big house. We didn't need a great big stadium or anything else. We just needed to be together.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you create that environment for your team, they're going to want to be together.
Great. Excellent. And that's called breaking it down. So thank you very much, Jason. Dale, the questions are pouring in. And one of the first I want to pose to you, because I have many as well, is that particularly during crises, and the region is experiencing and has experienced in recent years a lot of crises, and now we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have found in the development space that we can't work without collaboration. Just like I mentioned earlier about our initial collaboration with Jason and the FBI back in 2017 that led to this great relationship. One of the questions we have from the audience is, and it's someone from the Dutch Caribbean. They said, we're setting up the first cybercrime unit in the Dutch Caribbean. So kudos to you for that, audience member. They said, the question is, are there any platforms to meet other cybercrime units from the Caribbean? For example, calls with law enforcement officers from various units in the region to share intelligence. Can you respond to that, please? And also, there's another question that's related, so I'll ask you to take both as well. The audience member is saying that there are agencies with different goals, many agencies with different goals, but collectively in the region, I assume they're talking about the region, they seem to lack a common policy. And how can we reach that common policy? What is being worked on? And I think you're in an excellent position to be able to advise on other great work of CARICOM IMPACS in this case. So please take those two questions together for us, please.
For sure. Thank you. So I'll answer the question about the regional platform for law enforcement sharing intelligence. At CARICOM IMPACS, we have a sub-agency known as the Regional Intelligence Fusion Center. In my opening remarks, I spoke about the development of a digital forensic management platform, which is actually being developed there and is being funded. The development is being funded by European Development Fund. The platform is actually designed to allow for that sharing of information among law enforcement agencies safely and securely, and also to accept reports from members of the public, financial institutions, so that we could actually have an idea. And if there are instances where reports come directly to us, we would definitely communicate with our law enforcement agencies and CIRTs and CSIRTs or first responders in member states to share this information, because we realize the importance at CARICOM IMPACS, we realize the importance of a regional holistic approach to cybercrime and cybersecurity, because this is not this is a borderless phenomenon. Things that happen in the US, for example, where Jason is situated, definitely would affect where we are in the region. So that is the thought process behind the development of this platform. I heard Jason speak at length about managing staff and building teams and focusing on leadership and family and stuff. And I totally agree with you, Jason. One of the things that we are doing at CARICOM IMPACS through the same platform and some of our other initiatives is to actually have a knowledge-based management system, so that once we train our professionals in cybersecurity and cybercrime investigation, we are able to track and keep them, so that when something happens, we know who to go to in each member state, when these things happen. So that is one of the things that we are working on. And I totally want to echo the point about awareness. That is actually one of our major deliverables for 2022. We are actually going to do awareness sessions to bolster awareness for end users, public officials as well, because you are only as strong as your weakest link. We could have the most secure systems at our agencies, but the end users, the remote users at home, who are not updating their devices, who are clicking on links, who don't check their links before they click on it, who fall prey to scams, who are sharing devices as well. All these things affect security from a regional perspective. So we are addressing those issues at CARICOM IMPACS through our initiatives. We are actually working with the OECS on the digital transformation project, which speaks to add offer digital transformation for 4 CARICOM member states: St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And what we are responsible for is the cybersecurity, so that's cybercrime part of that particular project, because we recognize that cybersecurity is the thread that ties digital transformation together. So we are actually doing a lot of work. We have partnered with the Council of Europe to assist the member states in having what we call legislative and policy harmonization, because again, criminal duplicity in the investigation of cybercrimes is critical for us in member states. And the Budapest Convention is a is a tool that smaller states could level up the larger states in terms of sharing of information, which are actually important in time-sensitive investigations for member states. So we are ensuring that our member states get what is required from a legislative and policy perspective so that they are able to sign onto that convention, which would allow for greater international cooperation as it relates to cybercrime and cybersecurity. Another point, and this addresses some of the point that was raised about national policy and perhaps strategy within our member states. One of the things that we observed in our member states, we have a lot of draft policies that are not enacted. So we have draft documents there that have not been agreed upon by government representatives or parliamentarians, which means that even if we have first responders like CIRTs and CSIRTs in member states, but we do not have a national cybersecurity strategy, there is no legislative framework for the incident responders to respond to cyber attacks. So it's important for member states to drive these things, have political champions when you are actually developing national cybersecurity strategies, because this is a very, very important point. As we move to remote working in the pandemic, and it doesn't seem from my lens where we are at, that we are moving back to where we were 2 years ago. It seems that we are continuing with remote working. So obviously, national cybersecurity strategies, national computer cyber incident response teams and computer emergency response teams are critical, coupled with law enforcement agencies that are actually dedicated to investigate cyber crimes. And I'm happy to hear about the development of a cybercrime unit in that Dutch-speaking state. So I'm
Dutch Caribbean.
Caribbean, totally in support of that. And we at CARICOM IMPACS would gladly support you in your initiatives and lend whatever support that we can through our projects and our activities, our cyber program at CARICOM IMPACS. So that is my my response.
The response. Yes.
So,
so excellent takeaways, both Jason and Dale. And for those of you who are listening and taking notes, I hope you're paying attention to the nuggets that are being dropped. Pay attention if you want to retain talent. You know what to do. Look at the digital hygiene. Jason talks about a moat, creating and protecting that environment internally from professional to end user, training and retraining and upskilling. And also, Dale just laid a nice comment there. Cybersecurity is a thread that ties digital transformation together. But there's no growth unless we have digital transformation. There's no sustained, resilient economic development without digital transformation. So this makes this panel particularly important to our region and all the lessons and takeaways that the audience is able to get. So I'd like both of you to answer the next two questions, because we have 1,020 people around that figure online from 45 countries. And I think it's important that we break a few things down for them. The first is, Jason, before I pose the two questions, is please tell us what is a CISO, because you've now transitioned from the FBI to becoming a CISO of a multi-billion-dollar company. What is a CISO, and is there a lesson in that for those private sector professionals and government officials who are in the audience trying to understand whether or not they could make use of someone like that in their organization? So if you could break that down for us, but also answer these two questions as well. What sectors, this is from the audience now, audience questions, what sectors are most vulnerable to cyber crimes? And, what sort of sector-specific measures can be put in place, if any, for those highly vulnerable sectors? And then the other question has to do with smaller entities not being able to handle the cybersecurity costs. So there may be a confluence of the two, in that a highly vulnerable sector may also have a number of small entities, right? And the question from the audience is, what type of suitable risk management measures could be taken? So, Jason, what is a CISO? Whether we can make use of that more in the region, and also vulnerable sectors, and how do you help the smaller entities manage their cyber risks?
Hey, Dale, let's break this up. Let's tag team, because otherwise we're going to have really, really long answers. So I'll take the small entities because it actually ties into where I am now. So with the FBI, I spent 16 years with the FBI, and I had a phenomenal career. I had 4 years until I retired. And so I definitely did not see going to the private sector as being in the cards. And what really happened was a couple different things. We went through several tragic losses within a very short amount of time, literally agents that had passed away due to action that they had taken on the job, and it really helps reevaluate, where you are in life and what you're doing. And part of that reevaluation revolved around small entities. And for almost 16 years, I saw mom and pop businesses that people had poured their life savings in, going under left and right. And it was the same common thread and same common story. I was getting a phone call in the middle of the night, would never know the dentist office or physician office or you name the small entity. And they're like, oh my gosh, we've been hit by ransomware. We're locked out. We can't do anything. Or, oh my goodness, we just realized we have no money left in the bank. We're a victim of a business email compromise where they sent money overseas unwittingly because their email server was compromised. And all these had something in common. They were all small entities that thought they were so small that they couldn't do anything about their cyber hygiene or cybersecurity. And I just really wished, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, meaning just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of work can sometimes prevent the greatest loss of your life. And so the company that I work for now is a software company that does just that. Their customers are small to medium-sized businesses that don't have anywhere else to turn. So they can't afford to have a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer. So Chief Information Security Officer, I have a whole team of people that do penetration testing, that routinely ensure that the policies around our patch management are not only up to date, but enforced. Make sure that we have a robust education plan. I have a GRC team, which is a governance and compliance team that does nothing else but make sure that we're in compliance with GDPR and all legal entities throughout the world, because we're a worldwide company. So we have various teams and a lot of people that do a lot of very specific things. And no small business can take that model and have a Chief Information Security Officer and have a GRC section and have a real-time SOC or a NOC or any of the other things that monitor your systems on a real-time basis that would take, 10 or 20 people, even in a small company. So what our company does, and there's other companies out there, I'm not selling anything. I am a security guy. And I told them when I got here, and my job is to identify risk, mitigate risk, and communicate how we've done all that. So what I'm telling you is there are software companies like mine, and there's other companies out there that do this for a living. And they provide to small businesses software that allows you to have an all-in-one SOC, that allows you to do patching, remote monitoring, to have the banners on your emails that would indicate when an event may be a phishing or malicious email. And then there are these entities that we have in the U.S. called managed service providers, or MSPs, which use tools like my company creates and other companies like it to do exactly that, to manage your network for a fee. And what all these incidents have in common is in 16 years, and I'm not saying it would never happen or could never happen, because I'm a firm believer in it's not if, but when an intrusion takes place. But I do not recall in 16 years ever getting a phone call from a small business or a mom and pop store that had a legitimate MSP or had those kind of tools in place saying, hey, we've been hit, come help us, right? Unless it's like, one of the SolarWind instances or one of the other one where you have a supply chain issue. But I mean, other than that, every single week I would get 2 to 3 of those phone calls, and it ripped me apart inside that I couldn't do more to help them with the FBI. And so, with all the things that had come up in my life and all the things that I was going through after that reevaluation, I had an opportunity to come to one of the, largest software company that develops software specifically for small to mid-sized businesses, as well as managed service providers, and have a direct impact on those small businesses. And that really spoke to me. And all those things that I talked about with leadership and creating a team and, finding new and innovative ways to get people, those talented IT professionals, to join other companies besides, the Googles and Microsoft of the world. I thought that was a tremendous challenge. And ultimately, after a lot of prayer, I took it.
Great job. And I almost said thank you for your service, because it's a very noble way to look at a career that focuses on, maximum impact of benefit to the most. And so that, I think, because the audience question also asked about that in the context of the COVID-19 environment. And I think you answered it squarely there as well, because being able to lean smaller entities, being able to lean on larger entities to do this as a business is one way out to answer that question. And perhaps the safest way out to be able to manage your way through the COVID crisis. And Dale, what are your responses to those 2 questions put together as well? The latter 2 questions, not the CISO one.
Thanks. Thank you very much. From our perspective at CARICOM IMPACS, what we tell all our stakeholders, including the general public, we follow a very simplistic approach as it relates to these cybersecurity issues. The ABC approach: assume nothing, believe no one, and check everything. And like Jason said, the small to medium-sized entities in the region are the most at risk, because obviously the amount of investment allocated towards cybersecurity is not going to be as that of the larger multinational organizations. So those are some of the things that we observed. From our perspective, another observation, and I think it's critical to raise it at this forum, a lot of organizations still use personal Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo accounts for business transactions. From an investigative perspective, that is actually a lengthy process. If there's to be an email investigation of some sort of business email compromise, if you register your domain, have a website, and have email clients associated with your website, obviously you're going to have access to your logs as to who is accessing your websites, who's doing what via your email clients, and so. And from an investigator's perspective, what that does, it actually expedites things in terms of finding out who the bad guys are and actually tracing where your money went to. So in terms of compliance and financial crimes, that is where, in my opinion, there is a strong link between cybercrime investigation and cybersecurity. Just that simple thing in terms of registering your domain, have your own email clients, is actually something that could really, really help you as a small to medium-sized business. Additionally, links, internet resources. I mean, check these links, scan these links before clicking on them on your devices. There are a number of solutions out there, as Jason would have alluded to, that would allow you to scan these links. And even from multiple providers at once, you could see if the link has been flagged as being nefarious or questionable, and that you won't click on it directly and allow your devices or your networks to become compromised. Awareness is another key point here as well. Just verification and awareness. You see emails coming in asking for change in or suggesting a change in a banking account, asking to send money. Well, pick up the phone, make a phone call, ask a question, speak to your supervisor before you actually do the transfer. These things are very, very, very important. And time and time again, it's heart-wrenching when small organizations, well, any organization from that matter, for that matter, are attacked by these very, I would consider them simple attacks, and they lose a lot of money. So it's important that we just follow the simple ABC rules, verify everything going forward, and that from our perspective is actually going to reduce some of the these attacks that we are seeing attacking small to medium sized businesses in our region. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is the public and private sector partnerships. Even though the smaller companies do not have the resources to deploy certain things in order to be secure, partnerships with different entities, bring your brother's keeper, I think is actually going to assist very much in reduction of some of these cyber attacks that we're seeing during the pandemic. So that's my 2 cents to that. Is there any other question, Dr. Boyce, that I should answer?
Oh yes, we do have. Don't you worry, we do have. I'm going to come back to the question on whether the intelligence services in the Caribbean are under attack, and I'll ask you that directly, Dale. So I'll give you some time to think about that.
Sure.
Instead, on the point where you ended by mentioning cyber attacks, I noticed that there was a question from the audience. And again, it seems like this is a really core area, digital hygiene, cybersecurity, including for the small man. So this audience member is asking whether it is true that cyber attack methodologies are changing and whether they're more focused on mass attacks on smaller companies. And the person makes an observation that they seem to focus on small payments from a large number of companies. I'm going to ask Jason to react to that, Dale, and then I'm going to come back to you on the security question, and then we're going to talk about cyber insurance and other issues. So, Jason, you can wait on that.
So I'm gonna answer that one real quick, and I'm gonna answer a second one.
Sure.
Equally as quick, because I know we have about 13 minutes left.
Yes, we do.
So the methodologies are not changing. They're getting better. They're getting better at what they do. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And they're continuing to refine. The best ransomware attack is one that is out of the news, that someone pays, and that no one ever knows about. If you go on various forums, if you see various interviews with people that have done this, like true people that have used ransomware to attack folks, that's what they say. Don't take my word for it. Take the word for the people that have actually done it. They don't like when Colonial Pipeline gets hit or a big company gets hit and it's all over the news. Because what happens? I mean, like the July 4th event where there was an attack. What happened? They arrested 5 people because it was such a big deal. They got one person that was traveling, I think, from the Ukraine, that was in Poland. They got other people all throughout the world. So any kind of criminal, I mean, just think about it. Think about whether it's a pickpocket or whatever else. Very few people go into banks and, quote, rob banks. That's a very high profile way to do crime. There are much other smaller ways to do crime, to stay out of the limelight and still get your financial motivation for breaking the law. And make no mistake, that's exactly what these people are doing. They are financially motivated to receive funds and then go on and do something else. That's why you'll get great customer service from ransomware. Yes, I said it. Great customer service from ransomware. Because how long is their business model going to last if they don't make sure that you have your information back? But what people don't realize is, I always use the analogy, what they do is It's like they clean your house out. They take everything out of your house, throw it into the back of a pickup truck or a dumpster, right? And then when you give them the money, they literally drop it all off into your driveway. And you have to put all those pieces back in your house where they go. It's the same thing with your data. They'll dump all your data back, but it's not in the right spots that you had it before. And sometimes people that have even paid the ransom are almost down as long because they're figuring out how they need to collate their data and get it back into a usable form or fashion. So the other thing that I really want to hit on, because I think I have a really unique voice to speak on this, is the massive challenge and the disconnect between tech and business functions in the organization. Whoever wrote that is somebody that either has my role or somebody like my role, right? Because if you're in the business world, what do you understand? You understand ROI. You understand return on investment, right? And unfortunately, throughout the history of cybersecurity, we've been used to doing risk analysis, basically heat maps, right? Red, green, yellow, and we'll be in there with the CFO and the president and the board and everybody else, telling them all about these heat maps. And they're great tools. Don't get me wrong. They're a tool in your toolbox. But why are we using heat maps if they understand numbers and cents? Wouldn't it be better to do a qualitative method, right? Or a quantitative method, I mean, and actually try to quantify the risk? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what insurance companies do. Think about when an insurance company gives you a life insurance policy. They figure out how much risk it is to insure you, because I'm pretty sure everybody on the planet at some point in time, their time is going to come to an end. And it's up to that insurance company to figure out, okay, when is that? Or insurance companies would be out of business. So what do they look at? Do you smoke? Are you a tobacco user? Do you have any pre-existing conditions, right? And they start going through a list, and then they put it into a chart in a table, and they use algorithms to figure out what's the likelihood of something happening to you versus someone else that doesn't have those. So that's your job as a cyber professional. There's enough information out there where you can do a quantitative assessment, and you can do what's called a Monte Carlo table. You put all these numbers in a simple Excel spreadsheet, and you take basically a 90% range as to what would happen. You know what your gaps are. You know what you're not covered down on. Let's take a few basic ones that tend to be the ways that people get in, right? Unpatched vulnerabilities. What does it cost to have a patch management system, right? You know what that cost is. What is the cost not to have it? Okay. So, i.e., if you get hit, what is the lowest probability of anything happening? Is that $0? Is that $100? What's the highest probability? Would you lose the company? And if you're a $100 million company, would that be $100 million? Let's say you just put that in there. Even if you put that number in there, what a Monte Carlo table does, is it will randomly generate 10,000 different events. The Excel spreadsheet will, and then it will average out, and it will give you what that risk number is. You know, so if you say 30% of the time, if somebody gets in, something's going to happen. Well, it may be $0 or it may be $100 million. It's going to extrapolate that out 10,000 times. I don't feel like this is breaking it down, but this is nonetheless.
It's helping. But
so 10,000 times is going to go through there. You're going to have a number of what that remediation cost. So what that system cost for you to remediate it versus what that risk cost. And when you show that to a business person, now you're speaking their language.
Yes.
And now you're saying, okay, I don't know whether it's $0 or it's $100 million, but out of 10,000 times, right? And you extrapolate how many days or how many years that is or whatever, this is the likelihood that this is going to happen. And every single person in there is going to have a different risk tolerance and threshold. Some people are like, oh, I only want that to be like a 10% likelihood or a 5%. Guess what? You get your money to remediate that. You get your insurance policy, right? Because you've shown them, right, that, okay, well, right now you're a smoker and you need to quit the cigarettes because you've spoken their language. And so there's a lot of books out there. It sounds really scary. I had not done this before. I taught myself, and I worked with some other industry professionals. I'm happy to talk with people on here, walk you through it. But there's even great YouTube videos and stuff on it. This is part of the education piece for yourself. You have a problem. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was about to say, you also have another opportunity tomorrow on the closing panel, where you'll be appearing with the director of CARICOM IMPACS, with whom Dale works, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Jones. So for members of the audience, we wouldn't be able to get to all your questions, but Jason will be on that closing panel tomorrow. So we'll be able to do that. I mean, Jason, it's great to hear you clearly passionate about this. And I think that is a major takeaway for the Caribbean in terms of thinking how to deal with cyber risks. I didn't intend to interrupt you, so if you want to please finish.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to finish real quick because Dale's got, nuggets of gold that he needs to bestow on us before we leave, and I want to make sure I give him the last 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, we have to find a way to relate to people, whether that's our business leaders, whether that's our IT professionals, whether that's the person sitting next to us. We're all imperfect beings. But if we have a little empathy and understanding and try to come at it from not just our normal methodology, because every cyber expert in the room knows how bad it is. They know that this could be the end of the company. They know how bad it. We have to educate because everybody doesn't understand it. They haven't been educated the way that we have. They haven't seen the things that we've seen. And just telling them about it, so many people around the world will always have that belief that, well, it's just not going to happen to me. It hasn't happened to me in 10 years, in 15 years. It hasn't happened. So, I just think it's overblown until it finally does. And unfortunately, sometimes then it's eternally too late.
Awesome. So many nuggets, so many takeaways, so many lessons. And I'm very grateful because a lot of what you said is immediately applicable as takeaways and lessons for pretty much everyone in the audience. So I'm really grateful, Jason. And just to repeat, you'll be able to hear more of Jason and ask him more questions on the closing panel tomorrow, the panel that closes the conference, together with Lieutenant Colonel Michael Jones, who's the director of CARICOM IMPACS. We'll be able to look at all the emerging trends and issues coming out of the conference, as well as explore some of the issues that some of you have been lighting up the Q&A section with your questions. We'll be able to get to those tomorrow as well. But I would like to give Dale the last word, indeed, as Jason said. And Dale, from the perspective of your role, and the theme of this conference, which is about how do we make it better for the small man? How do we end poverty? How do we drive growth? How do we promote good governance, good hygiene, digital transformation, cybersecurity? What would be your takeaways? What would be, I'm almost tempted to say, your emotional takeaway, as Jason just spoke directly from his heart there about that issue. For those who are, particularly those who are in the region, and we have a lot of students in the audience as well as those trying to observing where we're going in the region. What is our path forward in terms of what do you see as your takeaway for now and the way forward for the region from a cybersecurity insights and risks perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things, could I quickly address the issue,
Sure.
the question in the chat about the Caribbean legislation?
Sure, go right ahead.
CARICOM IMPACS is partnering with international agencies, and we are also partnering with governments and AG offices in member states to include legislative drafters. So we are actually guiding. We are not drafting any new legislation. We are guiding. And to answer your question about medical records and stuff, if the new legislation takes that into consideration, or the legislation has been amended or drafted, absolutely yes. My closing remarks, two things. I hit on this earlier on, and it's because I hold it near and dear to my chest. Cooperation, public and private partnerships, not only occasionally, but developing a culture of support and partnership going forward to address the issue of cybercrime and cybersecurity in our region. Partnership is the only way forward, and it's not going to happen just by a whim. It has to be a structured approach, and that is why my next point is developing a plan. Even though you're a small business organization, it's important to have a plan or a document in place, and it must be a working document, a living document to address technology as it evolves in our region. So that is my key takeaways there. And just to add on, or just to comment a bit on the point Jason made, technology is a vehicle that is used by organizations to achieve the overall objectives of the organization. So it has to be considered as that. And here we are in a pandemic where technology is being put at the forefront and the foreface. So we have to now adjust our mentality, knowing that we're using technology, but we must use it safely. So we must have a plan. We must have a clear way forward to allow us to mitigate some of the or most of the cybercrime and cybersecurity issues that we are seeing globally and within our region. And that is my closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason, anything final you wanted to say?
It's always an honor when I present with you guys. I mean, you guys are masters in your field. You're so eloquent, and honestly, it's like talking to two old friends. Even though it's been a year, it's just amazing, and I appreciate your efforts. I hope everyone on here sees it's not just me that are passionate, but it's you both as well. And I just really thank you for your time and the opportunity today. Brilliant.
And thank you, audience, for sticking with us. We'll get to all of your questions, if not today, tomorrow as well. Well, we didn't get to all today, but tomorrow as well. You have had many takeaways right throughout the conversation. We have to yield for the next panel. I really want to thank you for attending, and all the very best. Take these takeaways that you've heard as lessons for today and for tomorrow. All the very best, and stay safe. Thank you, Jason and Dale.